Good Monday afternoon, everyone. Hello, my name is Kevin Marheine, and this is the Lions Grid, and we are coming live to you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. And today we get to celebrate a Week 15 victory. Detroit Lions won yesterday's game against the New York Jets 20-17, and proved themselves to 7-7 in the season. That's 6-1 over the last 7 games. And firmly kept themselves right in the hunt, right on the bubble for one of the 3 remaining, well, I guess it's now 2 remaining NFC Wild Card playoff slots. There's technically 3 spots left in the NFC because right now the NFC South is still open for business. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers currently hold first place there at 6-8. But it's you have the Panthers, the Saints, and the Falcons all at 5-9. So it's going to be interesting to see who can finally claim that NFC South position. But for teams not in the NFC South, there's 2 spots left because the Cowboys were able to clinch a playoff berth this week as well at 10-4. Even though they did lose to Jacksonville in that game, that did tie up one of the spots. The Giants were able to beat the Washington Commanders, so they currently have the leg up there for the second wild card spot. In Washington, even though they lost, currently holds the third and final wild card slot in the NFC playoffs. So, right there you have Washington at 7-6-1. You have the Seahawks at 7-7, coming off a loss, and then you have the Detroit Lions at 7-7, who of course have won 6 of their last 7 games. So, very much a possibility to make the playoffs. And you might be saying, well, why is it a big deal the Lions make the playoffs? I think next year is really going to be the year where they could really make a splash. But when you take a look at the Lions in general, the Lions have played 63 seasons in the NFL. All right. And of those 63 seasons, they have made the playoffs a total of 12 times. And of course, have the one playoff win back in 1991. As a franchise, the Lions don't make the playoffs very often. So just by number one, getting to the playoffs this year, I think is going to require the Lions to have run the table. Yes, they're currently 6-1 over a 7-game stretch, but I think in order to make the playoffs, they're going to need to win their next 3, which would put them, 9-1 in a 10 games over a 10-game period, and that's pretty unheard of for a Detroit Lions team. And the fact that that seems like a realistic possibility, something that they can do, is says a lot about this team, especially because they started the season off 1-6. So you're talking about a team who historically, as an organization, has only been to the playoffs 12 times of their 63 seasons. Having the possibility here to run the table and make it to the playoffs and represent the NFC as one of the 3 wild card slots, it's pretty big. It's pretty big. It's a pretty big opportunity they have before them. Again, I've been saying this whole time that I don't expect them to make the playoffs. It's not an expectation I'm placing on them because I recognize the fact that they likely have to run the table to do that. But the fact they've been able to beat the Vikings and now go on the road and beat the Jets, they're doing the things they need to do in order to position themselves to really challenge for that wild card spot. So, they have 3 games left against the Panthers, the Bears, and the Packers. They go out there and win those games. They've done everything in their power, everything they could do to make themselves a potential playoff team after starting 1-6. And at that point, it's hats off, kudos to the Lions. They've really played well, and so if they can do that, fantastic. But that's talking. Let's get a little bit ahead of ourselves. Let's look into the future. Let's talk a little bit briefly here about what we saw on Sunday against the Jets. Again, the Jets are a team who's also trying to get into the AFC side of the playoffs. At 7-7, they're still on the bubble too. The AFC East is a very competitive division. The Bills did clinch the AFC title at 11-3, but then the other teams, you have 8-6 Miami Dolphins, who currently hold the third and final wild card slot in the AFC, and then you have the 7-7 Patriots and now the 7-7 Jets. So those 3 teams right there are not a whole lot separating them record-wise, and all very good. But I think the Jets. Their defense is really good. We talked about the fact in the pregame episode that this was going to be Zach Wilson's first return since being benched, with Mike White having to sit out the game with the rib injury. And really, overall, he played pretty good, all things considered. I know he finished with what did he finish with? He finished 18 of 35 for 317 yards, two touchdowns, and the big thing, as we talked about, an interception. The Lions again did a very good job of shutting down the running game for the Jets, and this is back-to-back weeks where they've done a great job limiting their opponent to rushing yards. I think last week it was like 20 combined yards, and this week it's 50 yards for the Jets and running the ball. So that Lions run defense is really playing well. And again, they give up a lot of yards through the air, but one of the things that they've done differently during this winning streak that they weren't doing at the beginning of the season is forcing turnovers. And that one interception that they forced Zach Wilson to throw, and the fact that Jared Goff and the Lions offense has been doing a fantastic job securing the football and not turning it over themselves, again, put them in a position here where they could get a win against this very tough Jets team. And I think really the one thing, if you look back at this game, that you would have could have made this outcome more favorable for the Lions, and it was something we sort of talked about as one of the keys to the game before was being able to end drives and touchdowns and not field goals. There were two drives, one in the second quarter and one in the third quarter, where Michael Badgley came out and hit, I think it was like a 31-yard field goal and a 34-yard field goal. Had those two drives ended in touchdowns rather than field goals, you would have been it would have been a much different game, right? They would have been up 14-10 at halftime. Then in the third quarter, they would have been up 21-10. And at that point, who knows how exactly the game unfolds with with those being touchdowns instead of field goals. They might not have been in such a close game at the end of it, and it might not have been as nerve wracking for Lions fans, uh, even though they were ultimately able to hold on there. Um, and that play call, that touchdown, the 51-yard pass to Brock Wright was fantastic. It was a very exciting play with a minute 49 left, gave them the lead, and then they gave the ball back over to the Jets. The Jets did move the ball down the field, but thankfully, by the time they got into field goal range to potentially tie it up, there just wasn't enough time left on the clock for the Jets to get out there and get a field goal. So, the Lions were able to go and get a win over a very good opponent. But again, I think realistically, the only thing they could have done better, the Lions, this week, was again those two field goals, ending those drives in touchdowns as opposed to field goals. That really would have been the only thing they could have done to help distance themselves from the Jets, because otherwise they played really well. They played some really good football, and I think there's in particular, we've talked about this rookie draft class and how they've contributed. Aiden Hutchinson against the Jets had a Pro Football Focus grade of 83.4. Since week 11, his grade's been 89.5, which is fourth among all edge rushers in the NFL. And that says something because for a while there, people were questioning if taking him as the second round pick was a mistake, especially when they were 1-6. Had they, um, you know, had they mistakenly drafted him over Thibodeau or somebody else. Now Thibodeau, he had a nice game for the Giants as well against the Washington Commanders this weekend. But I think so far Aiden Hutchinson has really um, been has been pretty stellar for the Lions, as well as the rest of this rookie draft class. Uh, they continue to contribute. From an offensive perspective, Amara St. Brown has been fantastic. He's actually the first Lions player in his first two seasons to record seasons with 900 plus yards receiving. Um, so he is sort of starting to rewrite the Lions history books, which is exciting. I shouldn't. I had said earlier that the only thing the Lions could have done differently in this game to distance themselves from the Jets was those ending those two field goal drives and touchdowns. There was also a play that I remember very clearly where Jameson Williams had run behind every defender in on the Jets defense and was in the end zone. And unfortunately, Jared Goff threw the ball maybe probably like 4 yards short of where it needed to be. And he was unable to bring that catch in because he had to stop and slow down, and it allowed the defenders to catch up. Um, had they hit that in the early part of the game, been able to connect there, that also would have been huge. But it's nice that they. So we just talked about how Amon-Ra St. Brown has been. This is the second season with 900 plus yards. The fact they now have those deep threats with Williams and DJ Chark, who is now healthy, I think really gives this offense an exciting element. And then you saw Brock Wright step up. Obviously we traded Hawkinson to the Vikings, but there's still you still have to account for the tight ends, because if you don't, uh, Ben Johnson in this Lions offense and the team is going to find ways to put their weapons in positions to make plays, and you saw that against the Jets team, who has a very good defense. So the fact they were able to go ahead on fourth down and get that touchdown is impressive stuff out of the Lions. They continue to win. They continue to build this momentum. And with 3 games left in the season, if they can just continue to keep doing what they've been doing, there's no reason to think they can't make the playoffs. Again, I'm not expecting them to. I'm not going to be the person that says, "Oh, they have to do it. They have to." Obviously they've played 63 seasons and been to the playoffs 12 times. The Lions don't have to make the playoffs. In fact, more often than not, they don't. But the fact that this particular Lions team is really trying to, I'm sure you've seen at the end the SOL era, to really put that to bed. Um, they're out there winning the games they need to do that. I'm not going to sit here and say they've done that, because we're gonna have to wait to see what happens next year as well. You can't just go on this run this year and then just be awful next year. But it really seems like they are building something and not only momentum for this season, but they're starting to position themselves from a front office perspective, to really be a team that can be successful, hopefully here for years to come, including this season. They've shown that yes, they started 1-6, they had to work through some things, but now going 6-1 in their last 7 games, they're they're right there. They're right there, and I think a lot of teams in the NFL don't want to play the Lions. You don't want to run into them, because they're a team that is clicking at the right time. They're relatively healthy compared to a lot of the other teams out there. Jonathan Taylor with the Colts, they just lost him for the remainder of the season. You look at all the quarterbacks that have been dropping. Like the Lions have most of their starters on both offense and defense. They're healthy at the right time. They've been performing well. Jared Goff, talked too much about his stats. We talked about how he's continuing to take care of the football. But he still had a pretty decent game here, tossing for a touchdown, 252 yards. It was a little bit less than what we've seen in his last couple of games, where he's been over 300, but still 252 isn't bad. We saw the running game. We didn't see anyone get over 100 yards. We had 52 yards with DeAndre Swift, and as a team, they were able to get over the 100-yard mark with 107 yards with everybody combined. But just in general, the offense continues to click along. You're seeing players be successful. And then the defense, again, you're still seeing them give up yardage and sometimes chunk plays, but they've definitely adapted more of a bend not break mentality, where they're finding ways to create takeaways. In fact, I think I saw something that said it was this is the 39th game in a row where they've had at least one takeaway in it. So the Lions defense, that's been a really big thing for them over this win streak, is the fact that the defense is continuing to take the ball away and the offense isn't turning it over. So you have a positive turnover differential. They're putting themselves in positions where they're causing the enemy team to make mistakes, and they're not making the mental errors themselves. And they're the fundamentals of football, but the fact that you don't typically see Lions teams be successful at that, and now that they're taking care of the football, people are stepping up and doing their job. They're winning that turnover differential battle. They are more often than not finishing drives and touchdowns rather than field goals, with the exception being this week against the Jets defense that does excel in the red zone. The Lions have been very good in the red zone offensively, But I would say the Jets did get the edge there because they did hold them to 2 field goals in this game, and had those 2 field goals been touchdowns, obviously the box score would have been quite different. There were definitely a lot of good things. They were again, they didn't make any mistakes. They were able to hold on to the ball. They forced Zach Wilson to make a turnover. That fourth down play was huge, and getting Brock Wright into the end zone. So it's exciting stuff. It's meaningful football being played in December, and for once. That I can remember from my lifetime, the Lions are sort of stepping up and answering that call. They're stepping up and being that team that is, showing that they are worthy of your interest, of the excitement, of the buzz around them. They're starting to get some national recognition for that as well. And, again, I'm not saying that SOL is dead, that this team uh, is guaranteed to make the playoffs, but they keep doing what they're doing. They keep playing the way they have been. I think they have a very realistic shot of winning these next 3 games against the Panthers, the Bears, and the Packers, and making it to the NFC playoffs. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. It's been the Lions Grid. Thank you for everybody who's tuning in, whether you're watching live or watching a recording of today's show. We really do appreciate your support. We're coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. So whichever one of those is your preferred channel, please look up the Lions Grid. Give us a like, a follow, a subscription, and you'll stay up to date with all the latest episodes. Typically, we do a pre-game episode on Sundays and a post-game episode on Mondays to sort of recap the week and what it means for the Lions, not only in the immediate, like after the game, like what happened, but also the NFC North and the sort of NFL as a whole, taking a look at that big picture stuff. So certainly happy here that we are still or that we're in December, and that these games are still super important. The next game up for the Lions, again, is the Carolina Panthers, and that game is going to be played on Saturday, December 24th, Christmas Eve. A little bit of Christmas Eve action as the Lions travel to Carolina, to the Panthers to take on the Carolina Panthers. A game they do need to watch out for. I think they certainly should be favored in that game, but Carolina's defense is surprisingly good. Yes, they got rid of Christian McCaffrey. They're really good at running the football despite that. And Sam Darnold has done a pretty decent job of coming in there and adding some stability to a quarterback position that's sort of all over the place between Baker Mayfield, Darnold, and PJ Walker. They've been forced to play a number of quarterbacks through this preseason and the season, but Sam Darnold has sort of solidified that spot here in the last couple of weeks, and has been looking good. And that defense is no joke. They have a couple of really good players, that you have to watch out for, and it won't be an easy game. It's not going to be something that the Lions can just sleepwalk through, but a game I think they can get a win, and hopefully continue to build upon this momentum, and give everyone a fantastic little treat as we get ready to celebrate Christmas. So, again, I'm Kevin Marhani. This has been the Lions Grid. I just wanted to wish all of you if you don't, we'll do it again on the Christmas Eve show. But if you're not around, then just wishing everyone a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, and we will see you during the next episode. Bye bye.